You see, it's just, okay, what I'm saying by that is just to make the point that they're everywhere. And if we import bees from Georgia, maybe we're going to import small hive beetle, but not likely when we're just importing a queen or we're importing a package of bees. Now, if we bought a hive from Florida or Georgia, we might bring small hive beetles with us. You know, that's a problem we don't want to have. But, you know, I don't know if that answers your question or not. Yes.
Have you ever heard of people using whitewash of lime? I have a friend from Britain,
Yeah.
and she says that she uses on her hives and her chicken coops and stuff like that. Have you heard of that?
Yeah. Yeah, and whether it's effective for the mites that we're dealing with, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know about it. Question there.
So if you get a nuke with a cardboard nuke with the air holes on it, is it? What was it?
Yeah,
What was it? Can you put it in another cardboard box just for transporting it? If you're coming from Washington or whatever, does that make sense?
Yeah, you
So that way
can,
they
but
can't
just
get
make sure
out?
there's plenty of airflow.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't want to block, they've got to have the air. They've
Okay.
got to have that ventilation. Yeah. Okay, so let's see if we can get into this other one here. When you start a hive, there's several ways to do it, like I say, and if we're going to set up, let's say we're going to set up this this hive that didn't winter very well. All right, it wintered, but it had some major problems. This hive, you know, the second box is full of honey. It's heavy. All right, this hive started out. I didn't send it to California because it was weak to start. We didn't have enough bees. I didn't want to combine it with another hive. I didn't know what was going on. But look at all the honey in here. See, it was surrounded with honey. This whole second box is pretty well full of honey. And it had a cluster of bees that I didn't think was quite big. But it made it all the way through the winter and just died out about the 1st of March. And the reason it died out, here's some mold that came on there after that I pulled everything out and put it in the warehouse. The mold got on it. But this hive had plenty of honey, but the problem was that it didn't have a good queen. Now, on this, I can't know if you can see it from where you are, but it has little popcorn-like cells out here. They're worker cells that are higher than the rest. For some of you that have had bees a while, what does that tell you?
Those are queen cells.
No, they're drone cells in this case. The queen was a drone layer. She had gone bad. She'd lost her fertility, and so all she's laying is drone eggs in worker cells. So the outcome of that is that it goes downhill really fast, especially in the spring when they start getting active. So what I'm going to do is I'll take some of these honey frames. Now there's a good honey frame here, but what we would want is a couple of honey frames on each side. That's a little bit of honey there, that's pretty good. So I'll take a couple of honey frames here that are in good shape. This hive didn't die out because of a lack of honey or because of disease. It died out because it didn't have what it needed. And so we'll put that in here where it's going to be close to the bees. And we'll put another one in here on this other side. Now this hive is ready for a package. And there are several ways to put the package in. We're going to, let's just pretend that this is a 3-pound package full of bees, okay? What you're going to see is like you see there, only there's just going to be a lot of bees. And this can in here is a feed can. And this little cage in here is where the queen is. And so the bees are going to be clustered all around that. And if it's been a long time since the package was made, this can's going to be getting empty. So you want to get them out of there quick. And a day like today, if it's not raining, but it's just kind of cool and cloudy, is a good time to install a package. Or evening time. You don't want the bees just flying away, drifting away to another spot. So there are several ways you can treat it. Some fellows like to take a little spray bottle with 50-50 sugar syrup and spray on the bees, and that makes them kind of pay attention and stay together and clean each other up. It's kind of messy. You'll see in the video, he has a little different method. It's okay. Another way, you might want to smoke them a little bit just to kind of get them to cluster, but I don't worry too much about that. You know, if you're installing 100 packages in a day, you want to set up something that works quickly and simply. And if you're just installing 1 or 2, why, you can take your time. Question?
Yeah, the sugar syrup you're talking about, is that just like 50-50 sugar and water?
Right, by weight. Like 8 pounds of sugar and 8 pounds of water makes a little over a gallon of syrup. And since water is about 8 pounds per gallon, you just take 8 pounds of sugar and pour it into a gallon. Or if you want to have a 10-pound bag of sugar, you can mix that with a gallon and a couple of cups of water. Right? The bees will clean the mold up, but this one doesn't really have a lot of mold. There's some mold in the bottom. Oh, here's a better example of the drone brood here. To tell you that this queen was a drone layer. And here is a no-no in the center of a hive. That all of this stuff here is drone brood. You don't really, the bees didn't draw that frame out really well. And you don't really want that in the center of the hive. I probably move it to the side. It's okay for them to store honey in that. Around here is honey. There's no pollen. There's a little bit of pollen in here, which this side would be good for raising brood, but this other side is really not very good because there'll be too many drones. Okay, and the bees will clean up that little bit of mold that was on that one frame that I showed you. The bees will have that cleaned up in half a day. It'll all be clean. Yes.
Now you say yours got moldy after you took them out. Ours got moldy in the hive.
Yeah, that'll happen.
Everything was so moldy.
Yeah.
So,
If you've got moisture, sometimes it'll just be like thick, like a paper thing that goes in there. Yeah.
So they're done now.
Well, no, you can clean that up as much as you can, and then the bees, the bees will clean it up.
We didn't make it.
Yeah, they're amazing. They'll get right at it. One of the things, what I would do, you can either take a frame or 2 out to give the bees room to go, and so I'm going to do that. I'm going to move this one to the side because it's not as good. Here's a nice frame that has nice even worker brood, has some honey around it, has a little bit of pollen here, and that'll be just ideal for the bees to get started on. So I'm going to leave that near the center.
So you're not going to burn this hive before you add new bees to it to get any contaminants out that are possibly there?
I'm sorry?
You're not going to torch the frames or anything before you add new bees to it?
No.
There's no foul brood.
There's no evidence of foul brood here.
Okay.
Or mine.
So I thought if you started it over again, you were supposed to torch it each time.
Well, only if there was evidence of foul brood or you have doubt about that.
Okay.
And I wouldn't torch the frames anyway, you know. But you could look at this frame, and I did. If it had foul brood, you can see the scale of the dead larvae in the cells. And in that case, it goes to the burn pile. I would not, under any conditions, put bees back in that one. And then I would scorch the box too. Yeah. Okay, this one was okay to get going again.
So was it the time of the year that the queen went down? I'm just wondering why the other bees didn't make an effort to replace her.
You know, they might have, but see, if when I set it aside for winter, she was laying eggs. The colony was queen right, but it just didn't have very many bees. So she became a drone layer sometime between September last year and March of this year. And there's really no way that they can make a queen. They could raise cells, but it would just be a bad queen. Couldn't get mated. All right, so we could leave an opening there for the queen. All right, so and for the bees, I mean, there are different kinds of queen cages and everything. But what I would do with this, I'm just going to show you what we would do with this particular one. I would have it sitting on the back of my my hive like this, and we would take the can out. There's going to be bees clinging to it, so you kind of shake it a little bit as you take it out. And this can has a little piece of cloth with a little friction fit ring in here that allows the bees to get the syrup out. And so I'd set it aside. It's still usable if it has syrup left in it. So you'd set it aside. The next thing in here is the queen cage, and it comes on a little metal tab that slides in the slot there. And you just pull that out, and it's going to have bees on it. You just shake those bees off. And in the end is a cork. Now, they come in different forms. Some you'll see in the video, he has a cage like this, and it comes with a little different cap on it, and it's packed with candy up to here. Leonard Pankratz, who produces the bees for Tate, sometimes uses one like this. It has a little tube with a candy packed in this tube. In either case, you've got to have some way to protect the queen from the bees. So if you just have a cork in there, you need something to take the cork out, and you can use a nail or a screw or anything to take the cork out. But now this is a dangerous time to do this, because you've got a queen in there walking around, and she's been tended by worker bees on the outside, and she wants to get out of there, and you don't want her out of there. So this is one time when you don't want to have gloves on, at least on one hand, because you want to be able to deal with that. And if this does not come with a candy plug, then you want to have some miniature marshmallows to plug this hole. And so have a miniature marshmallow handy, and then you pull this cork out. I have a favorite tool to do that. And have your finger ready to plug the hole. And then just immediately put your marshmallow in there and pack it in that hole. And that gives time then for the queen and the worker bees to get acclimated again, and they'll eat that marshmallow out and release the queen. If it comes with a candy plug, then what you're going to want to do is just put a nail or something partway through that candy plug. You don't want to take it clear out, but you just kind of want to make an opening to make the communication there, and they'll eat the candy out a little faster. Okay, so you've got your package of bees here, and they're kind of buzzing around, and you've got your queen there, or here, someplace lay it. Then you can take this, just take the box, and just tip it upside down, and just dump the bees out in there. And it doesn't hurt to hit it on the ends a little bit to shake the bees out. And you're not going to get them all out. Another thing that you could do to start is even just make it, just hit it like that before you start pouring them, and the whole clump will pour out. And you'll get nearly all of them out. And then you can lay this aside near the entrance, and the rest of them will go in. Now after the bees have gone down and have kind of gotten in there a little bit, then you can start to close this up and bring the frames in, and that extra frame that I took out I was going to put in right in here, and you can put it right in here, and then you can take this queen cage and put it not right in the middle, and it depends on what kind of a feeder you have. If you have one of the frame feeders in here, it would go right along the outside here. But you don't want this where it's going to get in the way, and you also want to make sure that your screen is open so the bees can take care of the queen. So you put it in this way, not this way. And you put it in and put it in tight and put things up against it just in the top bar. Or if you have an inner cover that's up above this, or a deep lid on it, you could just leave it laying on top and they'll release her. Okay? So what we normally do is we put it down like that, put things in there like this, and put this frame in there. And once the bees are settled down, you just shake them off of here and put the lid on, and you're done. And you hope then that they stay put. And on a day like today, they would.
So you put the marshmallow in the hole
Mhm.
and just set the whole thing in there. You don't ever take the marshmallow out.
No, they're gonna eat the marshmallow out. So then, in a few days, you could go back in and make sure that the queen's released. So you just go back in, you wouldn't have to do anything except pull his cage out and make sure that the queen is out. If she's not, you want to release her. Yes?
Am I correct to assume that the rest of the bees are gonna follow or stay with the queen?
Yeah.
So then, in order to keep the bees in your hive bodies, would it be prudent to put like a queen excluder on the bottom and a queen excluder on the top? Keep her in there?
No, it's just, there's no need to do that. Yeah. The queen is, if she's a mated queen, she's gonna stay in. She's not going anywhere.
What do you use to feed? Like, do you use a certain feeding system when you're doing it?
Yeah, when we, if I'm starting a package, or if I'm starting, especially if I'm starting it on foundation with no drawn comb, you've got to be sure and keep feeding the feeder all the time. And a 50-50 light syrup is what you want to
Do you use
use.
the tray, or do you use a jar, or do you have a?
I use the inside feeder, the inline feeder there, the frame feeder.
Oh,
That's what I use. You can adapt to whatever. If you have a hole in your lid, you could use a gallon jar on the top with holes punched in the lid of the jar. That's an easy way. Or you can use that entrance feeder, the Boardman feeder. I think Steve has used that, and it's successful. It's easy to see. And but it is very important when you're first starting to have plenty of feed. Now this one will have plenty of feed because they've got honey in there. I won't have to worry about them. They've got 4 frames of honey, and they'll do just fine. But it wouldn't hurt to put some liquid feed in there just to stimulate them. That stimulates more brood production and stimulates them to just really settle in. So a liquid feed wouldn't hurt a thing. Another kind of feeder that I have has a screen that just goes down inside. It's on a wood frame. You just slide it in these feeders. You can do that, and that kind of helps, but it isn't perfect either. That's one of the drawbacks.
We used to put popsicle sticks that float in the water.
Yeah.
So when the bee does start to drown, it can climb in that stick, and
Yeah.
then it eventually gets to the side, and it climbs up, and it prevents it a little bit.
For the person that just has a few hives, if you just have 3 or 4 hives, there's some really nice top feeders now that you don't even have to mess with. You just put it right on top. It's like a lid, but it goes under the lid, and the liquid goes right into that. The bees come up and they feed through a screen. They never get into the liquid itself. That's an excellent way to do it. Another way is if you have a spacer rim, you can just take a plastic bag and fill it with syrup and just cut slots in the bag and just lay it in there, and the bees will eat through that, and they don't drown in the syrup.
Use a supplement like that, I don't know what it's called, like a tablespoon in or something.
You know,
essential oils and stuff.
Yeah, I don't, but I know Gina's husband used to do that. He really liked it. Some of the beekeepers really like that. I don't.
Is anyone in the industry have any, or know about any ill effects of using the white bleached sugar? Because there's a lot of us that don't eat bleached sugar because the chemicals they use to bleach it.
Well, here's the thing: when you're wanting to do sugar syrup, don't use the cheapest Western Family stuff you can buy, because bees don't do well on beet sugar to start with, and most of the beet sugar now is genetically modified. And so don't use it. C&H cane sugar is fine. You can use that. Do not use brown sugar. Do not use raw sugar. Bees can't digest it. You'll kill your bees.
What about agave nectar?
I don't know about that.
Alan, have you ever used the brood patties, when you roll out?
In California, we used a pollen substitute sometimes. I haven't used it up here. They seem to store enough pollen here that we don't have to worry about that. It is a stimulant though in the spring, and you can do it. realize we're going to talk more about treatments and things like that, and we talk about natural, and this film is called Natural Beekeeping. But realize too that even though some things are natural, they're not necessarily good for you. Arsenic is natural, but too much of it is not good for you. So we want to go in that direction, but be careful, because realize that anything we add to the beehive, even formic acid, which naturally occurs in the beehive, if you're adding more than is normal, you're going to disrupt the beehive. That's just a given. So whether we use powdered sugar to treat for mites, or whether we feed with sugar water, or whether we treat with something else, essential oils, peppermint, whatever it is, it's something we're adding to the hive, and that is going to have some kind of an other effect on the hive other than what we want. And we just have to weigh the trade-off. It's, we say, well, we don't want to use chemicals. Well, anything, mint oil is a chemical. It's not the same as Apistan or Coumaphos or something like that, which are, Coumaphos is an organophosphate. I don't even want to touch this stuff. Don't want my bees to touch it either. So there are some things we definitely don't want there. Other things that we do use and experiment with, but we have to realize we're putting something in there that isn't normally in there. And so if you can get away with it, the best way is to let the bees take care of it. And some people have done that and experienced huge losses to the mites right off the bat. But we're willing to go ahead and suffer through the huge losses to come out on the other side with bees that know how to deal with the mites. Well, if you can do that, some of us can't afford to do that, so we've tried to do other things, and we haven't been as wise as we would like to be. What we're finding now with colony collapse disorder is that we've been contributing to it ourselves as beekeepers. Because some of the stuff that we've treated mites with has an accumulative effect. It's sublethal dose, but it accumulates when it stays there. And, something that man has long to learn is that we're not God. We don't know all of the effects that are going to take place, and we need to be really careful with what we do. Yes.
I just recently heard that that farmers are being urged to change the practice of using seeds that are coated, because the stuff that they're coating the seeds with is getting into the air and killing bees.
Yep. Neonicotinoids.
Yeah.
Yes. And a lot of the genetically modified seeds are also being treated with these neonicotinoids, which then become systemic pesticides, which do not only in the dust phase when they're planting, but also in the plant stage. But the bright side of that is that late research is showing that it's not as bad a problem in the plant stage as we thought it was. So it still has a bad effect.